3, 2, 1. There's smiling Tom. How you doing today, Tom? We're talking networking today, not the smartest guys in the room. We're going to talk about what you do, how it makes a difference. We're going to meet some new people. If our streaming friends want to jump in and tell us what they do, how it makes a difference, share a link. We'd love to have it. So how you been, Tom?
Sounds good, buddy. I'm doing well. I've been getting for having she's 3 weeks today. For having a 3-week-old in the house, I feel surprisingly okay and refreshed. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure you remember when your kids were babies, but with one going off to college and one in high school, the other in high school, that part of your life is in the deep in the rearview mirror. But I'm sure you remember when they were babies, especially when you brought Cameron home from the hospital, as your first. I'm sure you remember that kind of first few months of a heavy adjustment period, and really just trying to figure it out, right, and figure out how it was going to work. And I think we're doing pretty well with that so far. Don't want to jinx myself, but I think we're doing pretty well. Becky is, taking the brunt of the lack of sleep because she's nursing, and there's not much I can do in the middle of the night when the baby's hungry. I'm not producing anything for sustenance for the baby. So I'm good at giving her a bottle, but otherwise not a lot I can do. So in that department, Becky's taking the brunt of it for sure. And I've been really busy with work the last couple of weeks. So, we're trying to figure things out, but I think all in all, doing pretty well. Baby's healthy, baby's gaining weight. Doctor's very happy with how the baby's doing. And we're getting some sleep. So all in all, not too bad. I only missed a couple of workouts in my Ironman training schedule. I'm pretty much back on track with that and hitting all my workouts. So it hasn't slowed us down too much, right? Becky's still recovering and everything. Obviously, actually having the baby is a lot more work than I had to do. But yeah, we're doing okay. I think we're getting through it. We're getting by.
Hey, I will tell you, Tom, you mentioned when first baby born, blessing. When my son was born, he slept and he was so sweet. And I think the big man, and the big man that created all this stuff, I think my son was perfect, and it made you say, hey, I can do this again. I'm young enough. And my daughter cried for 1 year straight. So every night, all night, this was when this is 2009. So people weren't using computers or phones the same way. And I used to sit there in the middle of the night and just record her crying, as I held her and, hit her back and all that stuff, because there was nothing I could do. She just cried for a year straight. And so I think maybe Julie, your mom, maybe you can help us with this. Do you think that sometimes the first child is easier? Is that a thing?
That's the only reason there's second children. Wait, Dom, you just said that you hit her back. You're like, I would just sit up at night and hit her back.
Isn't that, I mean, come on.
I think you meant patted. Patted. Patted her.
Hit in a love.
I hit her back.
I wasn't jumping on her or anything like that. Okay, so
I keep joking with Becky that you know how when you hold a little baby, you kind of do that little sort of bounce, that thing to just create a little bit of movement, and that tends to soothe them a little bit and kind of make them a little bit happy. You just kind of do that little bounce thing. And I keep joking around and being like, I don't know why they tell you not to shake babies. This works like a charm. I'm shaking, and she's out like a light. And she's like, you got to stop saying that, because somebody's not going to understand that you're joking. But yeah,
even you saying that, I looked away for a second and I heard shaking. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is not good. Okay,
Yeah,
I
no,
get it.
Throw
just
the
doing-
baby out with the bathwater. That's
Uh-huh.
another one that we have
Yeah.
to stop saying.
We
Yeah,
need
well,
to
I
go
think-
back to. Go on.
I was gonna say, I think, you know, I'm the second in my family, right? I have an older sister, and I think 100%, Dom, you're right that like most of the time, or for a lot of people, I've heard this from a ton of people, the first baby was a dream, and so they were like, yeah, we could do this again, and they had a second baby, and very similar to your experience, it did not go as smoothly as the first baby. You know, the baby was not as cooperative or well or gentle mannered as the first baby, I guess. But my mom apparently made a joke to my sister when I was a baby. My sister's just shy of 4 years older than me. So she was about 3.5 when I was an infant, and or 3 3/4, almost 4 when I was an infant. And my mom, I was being really fussy and like could not be soothed, like would not stop crying. And my mom joked, it happened to be garbage day. And my mom jokingly said to my little sister, I'm going to put him out with the trash. Right. And my sister apparently freaked out, and like got really upset. And my mom then had to calm her down, because she thought she was not quite 4 years old. She didn't understand sarcasm yet, and didn't understand that my mom was kidding, which then turned into a big thing, and she had to calm my sister down. And then later in life, my sister used to always joke with me that it was the biggest mistake she ever made was telling my mom that she couldn't throw me away or put me out with the trash. So but yeah, I mean,
beg your sister.
we had people asking when Becky was still pregnant, and then while Becky was still in the hospital with Isla, we had people asking if we were going to have another. And I was like, oh my goodness, like let us get them home first and give us like a minute, like a hot minute, before you start quizzing us about whether or not we're going to have more.
You got to make that
Like,
decision when things are good. That's why they're asking you. All right, let's go here. Not the smartest guys in the room. Here we go.
I got to tell you though, you got to make that decision when things are good.
Yeah.
Becky was a hard no when she was still in the hospital. Let me tell you, like hard no when she was still in the hospital. Like there's not a chance she would have signed off on that. So anyway, that is not the right time to ask that question. But I just thought it was crazy. Anyway, yeah, no, let's get back on track. You're on mute, Dom. You muted yourself, but yeah, this is not the smartest guys in the room. We're actually going to get on track with what we were going to talk about today. So I will hand it back to you, Dom. You take it over. And
all right, let's do this, Tom. So the idea was networking is always good when done right. So we want to know from you guys. You come, what you do, how is it making an impact? How do you want it to make an impact? John, you came off mute there for a second. He was banging some drums. So what do you do? How does it make an impact? Or if you want some help with that, determining it, throw it out there. You got a group of creatives, people out there doing it. So throw it out there. So Tom, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, right, like, how do you introduce yourself and your business, and what you do, right, to people? So when you're in a networking situation, when somebody asks you, what do you do, right? How do you answer that question? And it's something we can always all kind of work to improve, right? Because there are ways that we see what we do, see our businesses, think about what we do, that maybe don't translate well to other people, right? So it's always a good thing to sort of practice that, talk about it, put it out there, work on it in an environment where we can get feedback from people, valuable, insightful feedback where people can where we can sort of hone that so that when we go out in networking situations, we're better prepared to really describe what we do, how we make an impact, and how we can help the people that we're talking to. So I think that's really the goal we're going for today, right, Dom?
That's it, man.
Do you want to hit lead off?
Okay, I'll bat lead off, and I tend to change these all the time. I have a basic one that I use, but I also believe it's good to switch them up. Like our friend Harry Spate says, maybe you only got 30 seconds and you should just ask a question. Maybe you should share a tip. Maybe you should understand that in that 30 seconds, I don't have much time, so I just want to grasp their interest. So I say, I'm Dominick Domasky. I have a company called Motivation Champs. I share inspiration, positivity, and smiles 24/7 and help other people do the same. So that's where I go. Now somebody's going to say, I don't know what this guy does. I'm fine with that. You're at that point because I'm leading to, this is what I do. Now, if you want to dig into it, I help people write books. We create content. We help them develop their message. But at its root, it is inspiration, positivity, and smiles, and help other people do the same. So I want to lead short. I want to get out of it. I don't want to dwell on it. I'm in and out with why I say what I say. I wonder what the hell does that even mean? Well, let me tell you. That sounds interesting. Let me tell you. So Julie Loken, Tom, we're going to switch. We're going to go to Julie Loken, John, Debbie, Sonia, and then we'll get to you too. At some point, we'll get to you. But Julie, what do you got for us? You want to play?
Tell me. Cue me up, Dom. Cue me up.
Okay, so this is Julie Loken. So as a business owner, as media casters, what do you do? How does it make a difference? Do you have an elevator pitch? So when you introduce yourself, what is your go-to? What is your go-to?
Go to John first.
All right, John, let's help Julie. Let's go to John first. It's perfect. That's fine. John, what do you do?
I tell people I'm a syndicated radio show host and podcaster, and I give people platforms to tell their stories and their experience. And that's right in there.
John, and I think John's we know John's very clear with it, but he's so clear with it. Like I have certain authors, like John, I have a firefighter right now, or Debbie has a story where all of a sudden I'm like, with the hundreds of media outlets I'm connected with, I'm like, I know that firefighter is a perfect fit for John. The story he has, the story of suicide attempts and trauma and stuff like that, because John, it's perfect for John. So Tom, thoughts on that? And then let's keep this rolling. And maybe we'll let you have a turn too. Go on.
Yeah, I like that. I will say one thing. You used the term elevator pitch, right? And I like, you know me, you know how I get about like certain things. I have like likes and dislikes, right?
I'm going to battle you on this. Bring it on.
I don't like the term elevator pitch, right? Because I think it's kind of misused, right? Like an elevator pitch is really specifically designed, right, or meant to be a short pitch for funding, right? A short pitch to a potential investor, right? Not an introduction to what you do, right? Not something to be used for networking. Because I believe that networking is about building relationships, and an elevator pitch is not about building a relationship, right? It's about getting an investor, right? It's about making your case for why your business is worth investing in a very short amount of time. And I don't think that that's really that's in line with what networking should be about. Your primary goal at a networking event should be to develop relationships with the people in the room, not to sell them.
All right. So Tom, hold on. I got to come in here.
All right, go for it.
You're in an elevator with somebody from NBC that you want to work with.
Okay.
Okay. Tom is in let's say I'm going to switch it. Tom's in an elevator with somebody that he would like to work with.
Okay.
Call it whatever you want. What do you do? Do you just stare at the buttons, or would you go for it? And if you were going to go for it, what do you say?
Yeah, well, if I was going to go for it, if I was going to try to start the ball rolling in the direction of working together, the first thing I would definitely not do is try to convince them to give me money. That's the last thing I would do. The first thing I would do would be to open up a conversation with them. And to do that, I would look for some common ground, right? I would look for some place where we have some common ground that we can have a conversation about, right? So I would probably go back to my days in TV, right? So if I was in an elevator with somebody from NBC, I would go back to my days in TV and, try to start a conversation about television production or the industry in general, or their experiences in the industry or whatever, right? But I would ask questions rather than just, hey, how you doing? My name's Tom. I own Talex Media. Here's what I can do, blah, blah, blah. Now sign a contract and work with me, right? Like, I'm not going to do that because that's not going to help me. That's the last thing I can do. And it's antithetical to my whole thing, which is lead with value.
All right. So so to get to it, how are you going to introduce yourself? Not in general at a networking event.
Right. So a couple of things for me is, like, first of all, I don't ever lead with what I do, right? Like, I only tell people what, like, in a networking situation, I have like a couple of like sort of hard and fast rules that I try to abide by. But one of them is that I don't ever lead with what I do, right? I don't introduce myself as Tom Langan, owner of Talex Media, right? Like, I introduce myself as Tom, period, right? And when they ask me what I do, what I tell them is I own Talex Media. It's a full service media production company. And really, if you get down to it, what we do is we help businesses and organizations develop long lasting and meaningful relationships with the communities that they seek to serve. That's it. That's all I say to start with, right? And then almost inevitably, I get asked a follow-up question. Well, how do you help them develop relationships, right? And it gives me the opportunity to dig in a little bit, to give them a sense of like the values that drive the work that I do, and that opens up a broader conversation. But yeah, and I'll reciprocate too. I'll tell them what I do, and then sometimes they won't ask me a follow-up question, and that's fine. I'll turn around and say, well, what do you do? Right? Tell me about your business. Who do you like to work with? Right? Like, how do those kind of relationships come about? Like, whatever. There's a variety of ways the conversation can go from there, but that's my standard answer to what do you do?
Okay, that's fair. And your point, the distinction you are making is very clear. There is a time to come up and introduce and match and mirror and talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Pittsburgh Steelers. I guarantee if I'm in an elevator with anybody and we're in Pittsburgh, I am starting with a different conversation. But for this exercise, we're talking about that. What is your go-to? Like you said, I'm humanizing the world of business, or this is what I do. This is who I am at my core. So, Julie, you heard John, you heard Tom. You want to take a stab at it? Then we're coming. Debbie, Sonia, hey, what's going on? Jackie, hey, what's going on? Okay, Julie, you're up. And you could try different ones, and you can
elevator pitch, like
what your go-to. You're at a network. Your go-to. This is who Julie is and what she does.
I would even, like, Dom, let's just make it super simple, right? So, like, Julie, here's the question, right? You're at a networking event. You meet somebody, right? We get introduced. Hey, I'm Tom. Hey, I'm Julie. How you doing? Nice to meet you. Julie, what do you do?
PR and media. Thank you.
Okay.
But,
now we're going a step farther. Go on. So go on, Julie.
Honest, like, whenever I network, I find it to be more interested in what other people do instead of trying to be the most interesting person. And I ask questions about them. It typically naturally evolves into what I do and who I serve. So
okay,
that's
come on. This is it, because everybody, like John was super clear about it. John's super clear, and we're like, man, I know what this guy does, and it wasn't. I want to, how I would, Julie, how does your work, how does your PR work impact people? How does it make a difference?
I get your voice seen throughout the masses. I get your voice heard. I elevate voices from excellent to elite.
There you go. Like, to me, that's a whole nother level. So I'm Julie Loken, what I do is I'm in PR. But what I really do is I get your voice heard. I elevate your voice. I make it elite. All of a sudden with one little tweak. John, since we love yours, what do you think about that? What she need to do, or are we on the right
He
path?
hates it. I already
Yeah.
know he hates it.
No, I don't know. What's John? Don't ever, Julie.
Well, he always tells me that I have to know how to pitch myself, and it's just something
Do it.
in my mind.
Do it.
I do it for everybody else, but it's hard for me to do it for myself.
So John, if you had long blonde hair like Julie Loken and ran Media Casters, how would you introduce the business?
Well, first thing I would do is I would give a little bit of an explanation of who Julie is. When she says the two or three words doesn't really invite a conversation, because when I say I'm a syndicated radio show host, blah, 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 and I provide a platform for the next question is, oh, really? How many radio stations are you on? And then it instills a conversation. Nowhere in there does Julie tell people anything about her. That's the thing, and her accomplishments. And that's my major complaint with what Julie does. If you don't tell people a little bit about what you do, how are they going to know you can benefit them? End of story.
Truth. But I like it to come out organically, but I know that I have to be more forceful, if you will, like John J. Wiley is. So.
Yeah, we're talking about
You
certain.
just got to tell people about you. That's all.
And there's certain situations, right, where like, we're not saying show up at the networking event and run around and say, I'm PR expert and I elevate voices. We're saying once the conversation gets to that, are you clear? Do I know what you do? I struggle sometimes when I can't figure out what people do. I'm like, what? Like, same with if I'm watching a podcast or video on what is going on here. I don't understand it. And so I do struggle. Debbie Griffiths, our dear friend.
Who's a new grandma, by the way? Debbie's a new grandma.
And I wonder how her arm's doing. So our dear Debbie Griffiths retires, becomes a new grandma, writes books. All of a sudden, her arm's broke. She's got all kinds of things going on. So, Debbie, you want to give us a look before we get into this? And I'm going to keep using this term, elevator pitch, even though Tom hates it. But I don't want to get caught up in the nuance of the nuance. I'm looking at a Harvard thing here and it's funny because my son is just about to go to Temple for Business, and they were like super into that elevator pitch, and just like they used it as a broad term. So I'm using it as a generalization here, not that you're trying to pitch somebody for money in the elevator. So Debbie Griffiths, first an update on all you got going on, and then dig into this conversation, if you would, for us.
Good morning, everyone. What do I have going on? Probably a little bit too much. I am a new grandma, so I'm very excited about that. I've been in the process of moving, relocating, but had to come back to California. So my medical insurance would cover my surgery and everything for my arm, which is healing nicely. And I'm very excited because I start physical therapy tomorrow because I really want to be able to drive again. It's a little interesting, with one arm in a sling and trying to do basic things like getting dressed and eating with the left hand when you're right-handed. So it's been a interesting situation, but that's what makes life interesting. So you get some lemons and you make lemonade, right? So going back to your title, elevator pitch. Sorry, Tom, I know you hate the word, but I basically tell people that I'm an author and who's raising awareness on the red flags and subtleties of domestic. and empowering women to open up and share their stories.
I think that's pretty clear. Tom, thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. It's clear. And I think one of the things too that I think is important to do in answering this question is to sort of create the opportunity or invite it to turn into a discussion, right? Like you don't want to be so short with your answer that it doesn't invite questions, right? And I think like Debbie's is great. I think John's is good too, because like, you know, he says he's a syndicated radio host. Well, okay, so like what stations are you on? Like, are you on a station near me? Like, how do I listen to you on the radio, right? And Debbie,
Right. What does that even mean? If you don't know what it means, and then
right,
the first question is, he says, go on.
Exactly. What does syndicated mean, right? Like in mine, when I say like I own Talex Media, we're a full service media production company, right? Almost inevitably, the first question I get asked is like, oh, does that mean you do video, right? I get asked that almost always, like in a lot of, like in many networking situations, that is the follow-up question. Oh, so like video. And I say, yes, video is sort of the cornerstone of our business. We also produce other media assets for companies and for organizations that we work with. But video is definitely the cornerstone of our business. That's my background. I spent 17 years in the entertainment industry, right? And that leads to more conversation, right? So I think it's, you know, I think what Debbie's doing really well, what John's doing well, is sort of inviting that furtherance of a conversation, right? Saying something that's interesting enough that it sort of spurs someone to ask a follow-up question, right? So I think that's a really good way to sort of, you know, answer that, because ultimately that's what we're talking about, right? Is answering that question, what do you do, right? The last thing you want to say is, oh, I do this, right? And kind of make it sound like you don't care about what you do or you're not interested in what you do. Like, then what are you doing at a networking event, right? What are you doing out trying to meet people, right? If you don't like what you do and you're not excited about it and you don't want to talk about it, what are you doing? Why are we even having this conversation, right? Like I have conversations with that. I'll be introduced to people at networking situations where they'll kind of like downplay what they do and be kind of like a bummer about it, right? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to ask any follow-up questions then, because it seems like you don't like it. And like if you don't like it and you're not excited about it, then I can't imagine you want to talk about it, right? We take those kinds of cues in conversation from people. So, you know, I think it's important. That's one of the reasons, again, like why I don't like the term elevator pitch is because I think it's about having a conversation and developing a relationship, and a pitch is one direction, right? It's I'm talking, you listen, right? Whereas asking questions, answering questions is a conversation, and that's kind of like how I prefer to look at these kinds of things. But where are we at? We're at 10 o'clock. Man, we're halfway through. How we get halfway through already? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, we're cruising. We're cruising.
It's either that or
go back to our 3-hour shows, man.
I'm just yapping too much. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm too chatty Cathy today. But I've been spending a lot of time talking to a baby, and she doesn't have a lot to say back. So I've gotten used to just droning on without giving anybody else a chance to talk. But yeah, no, I just want to say too, like take a second before we move on, before I turn it back to you, Dom, to just say thanks to everybody for being here. You know, we didn't have the show last week because Dom was off at the beach working on his tan, a little vacay with the missus, and working on his tan in Ocean City, right? But just want to say thanks to everybody for being here. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We appreciate you being here. Even when we take a week off, it's always really nice to see a whole bunch of folks show up and say hi and get involved in the conversation. So thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. What do you think, Tom? Who are we up to? Who's next in your rotation?
Tom, that was quite touching. I think Tom might be softer now that he's a dad, and this is Tom 2.0.
I'm still not a crier though. I'm still dead inside. I haven't cried at all about. I didn't cry when she was born. Haven't cried at all since. I'm still dead inside. I'm still not.
Come on, I try to be nice, and there you go. All right, we are up to our dear friend Sonia. Sonia, so the question is, what do you do? How's it make an impact? But we're really asking you, you're at a networking event. You go up to somebody. How do you tell people what you do? What do you say? Go on.
Good morning. I tell people, I'll say my name is Sonia Chand. I am a psychotherapist, and I work with a variety of different populations, ranging from children to adult. And I work a lot with autism spectrum disorder, mood disorders, anxiety, social anxiety, and OCD. I also am a podcaster of On the Spectrum with Sonia, and I have a book that it's going to be published in February called Dropped in the Maze.
I'm hearing good things about this book. I'm actually doing some reading, Tom. There's something there. She's got some magic there. So John, I'm going back to John Jay, because John Jay is our resident tell it like it is here. Is that all right? So John Jay, what's Sonia need to do?
Well, I always say this: lead with strength, and lead with something that we know is going to create a conversation. So what I would say with Sonia is, and I don't know that there's a specific thing with her. What I would do is I would structure it in, we know what's the relatable feature in what she does. Either you have an autistic child or someone on the spectrum, or other anxiety disorders, or you know someone that does, or you have a grandchild that does. I would really plug into that. I think it was almost a little too clinical, if you ask me.
Okay, so that's interesting. Sonia, is there a reason, because you don't always work with autism, but autism is an area you focus on. I like our friend Brian P. Swift. He's not here right now. Brian P. Swift seldom mentions that he's quadriplegic. And like we're friends of him, and we're like, Brian, you should, like, we're not saying dwell on it, but it's interesting that you don't mention it. So is there a reason, Sonia?
That I mentioned?
Yeah, that you don't, that like to John's point, that you didn't really go down any of the autism path or your work with autism.
I mentioned that as part of people I treat. I didn't go into the fact that I'm on the spectrum myself.
Yeah, which it might not be. You don't necessarily need to lead with it, but I saw what John was saying about it being a tad clinical. So go on, Tom. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think Sonia, I think what I would maybe suggest is kind of to John's point, to maybe kind of lead with, professionally, your sort of qualifications. You're a psychotherapist, right? Who you work with, but then why you work with those people, right? So not just what you do, but why you do it, right? So something along the lines of like, I'm a psychotherapist. I work with X, Y, and Z people. I work with people on the spectrum. The reason why I'm so passionate about working with people on the spectrum is because I myself am on the spectrum. And I faced these challenges in my life because of it. And I'm in a position where I can help other people deal with those challenges through my work. And so that's why I do what I do. Right. So maybe something along the lines of like, not just what you do, but put in a little bit of why, right? Like what motivates you? What do you value? And how do your values motivate the work that you do? Right. Because I think that'll give who you're talking to a little bit of a better sense of who you are rather than just what you do. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thanks everybody for their feedback.
Yeah, good stuff, Tom, John. Thanks, and thank you, Sonia. I don't want to be political here. I got stinking for making this example. The other day, so I hear a part. I'll keep it without saying the name. The other day, I'm listening to politics, and they're talking about one of the candidates. And then the candidate gave his speech, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now you got it down to 2 or 3. But then they said, oh, this is the first time I realized the reason the candidate is running is because they're trying to fulfill their father's legacy, a portion of the father's legacy that wasn't realized. Okay, so once I knew that, if that is the reason, even if they were spinning it like that for 5 seconds, once I knew that about this candidate, I said, that's interesting, because I know a little bit more about the reason why. And so that just made me, for a second, maybe I'm willing to listen or learn a little more. So, all right, not the smartest guys in the room. It's networking time. We got Jackie here. So I was looking at this profile picture. Rise and shine. There you go. So I think it's Jackie. But Jackie, I hate when I do this. We did an episode of Bikes and Hikes the other day, and we were at a place called Wolf Rocks. And to me, it should have been Wolf's Rocks. And so for an hour, I messed up this thing every time I said it, because how can there's a bunch of rocks and there can't be one rock. It should be wolves. All right. Anyway, I digress. So on to Jackie. What do? You meet somebody at a networking event. What do you say? How do you hook them? How do you get them to say, that's interesting. I want to talk to her a little more. Go on.
Okay, so I'm like Julie. I normally ask them what they do first, and then I can segue what I do into what they say, no matter what. So if they say, oh, I do this, and that, I'll be like, oh, okay, well, my name is Jackie. I go by the Mama Jack. I do a podcast on parenting. I actually just started to sprinkle my spirituality in there as well. So you'll get some esoteric things happening. And I'm also starting a nonprofit and writing a book at the time. It started with my postpartum depression journey, and it just kind of sprinkled out from there, from me just putting people's stories out there. I love to get people noticed. I love for people to feel like they have somebody they can connect to no matter what they're going through. And that's kind of where I normally land with what I say. And then conversation normally continues out from there.
Go. So we're going to keep this rolling. Tom, what do you think? Is there, and this isn't for us to, one, you can just introduce yourself. We're good with it. But is there thoughts? You and John, I like this. You and John have been our quasi villains. Yeah, have been our quasi villains today. See how I pass the buck to everybody else? That's what I love about.
Blame it on me.
That's what I love about co-hosts with different personalities than mine, and I can just be like, hey, here you go. Go on.
Yeah, I got broad shoulders and thick skin. I would say, similarly to what I said to Julie before, I would say the same thing to Jackie, like right off the bat, like be excited about what you do. When somebody asks you, that's an opportunity to talk about something that you're obviously passionate about, or else you wouldn't do it. So like, don't be shy about sharing what you do. Right. I don't think you should give, don't talk for 10 minutes and not let them get a word in edgewise, but like, be excited about it. Right. Tell them and like being excited about something means you communicate it to other people, right? Means you shout it from the rooftops, right? Means you relish the opportunity to share it and to tell other people about your work. Right. So I think that really comes across when somebody asks you what you do and you light up, right? And you smile and you get to tell them, you get to start going down the path of explaining your mission, right? Or your pursuit, your passion to those people. So I would say, don't shy away from it, right? Like, yes, absolutely ask people reciprocally what they do. Don't let the conversation be one-sided, but don't shy away from answering the question. When somebody asks you, answer. I think that's my 2 cents.
Tom, your point is valid, and I am guilty of a lot of times. Even though I am super passionate, I run I run so hot and so passionate about what I do that sometimes I almost know that, well, I'll be like, well, that's boring. We don't want to talk about that now. Like, because I know that I'm going to be like, show up and throw up and just be too aggressive. So I almost downplay it when that's not good either. So, John, you flashed. What would you want to add?
Yeah. And here's the question. And I agree with Tom wholeheartedly on this one. The question was, if someone asks you a question, what you do. If I ask you a question, what you do, and you automatically respond with, well, let's talk about you, what you do, I'm gone. That's the deflection. That's the interview tactic that usually shows that you want to evade responsibility for what you do. So if someone asks me what I do, I'm going to tell them, and I'm going to encourage a conversation. In that conversation, I'll ask them about what they do. But if I'm like Tom, if they turn around immediately and say, "No, I want to talk about you," I'm leaving because I took the time to ask you.
Okay, so I was looking at it as like randomly walking up to somebody at a networking event, not somebody like actually coming to ask me what I do. So if somebody came to ask me what I do, I would share what I did first. I wouldn't deflect it and go to them. I would ask them directly after I was done, unless they had questions. And then after the questions, I would ask them what they do. But yeah, I was looking at it like I'm at a networking event, speaker's done talking, because normally there's a speaker, and you get up and you're looking around, you go to the certain people, like, and that's kind of the way I was looking at it. But yeah, I would never deflect, because yeah, I agree with you, John. Like, then it just shows like you're kind of shying away. But if I were to go up and find somebody to talk to, I would want them to know I was interested in them as well. So I would probably ask them about themselves first. But if they asked me, then I'd be down and I'd just start chatting.
Yeah, and just to clarify, totally understand that, Jackie, and sorry we didn't make that more clear. Just to clarify for everybody in the room, so we're very clear on the question here is, we're paint a picture, right? The scenario is you are at a networking event, you are in a conversation with someone, and they ask you, what do you do? How do you answer, right? We're not talking about you're at a networking event and you walk up to somebody and the first thing out of your mouth, right, is blah, 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 blah. I think one of my favorites, and I think somebody in this room actually was the one that said this first. I think that's where I got it. I think it was a while back. But we were talking about like, how do you start conversations with people at a networking event? And somebody said that, I can't remember who it was, but it was, I'm almost positive it was here. It was in Not the Smartest Guys. That somebody said one of their favorite things is to just come up with it, like to use a non sequitur. So they'll walk up to somebody and they'll just say ketchup or mustard. And almost inevitably the person will go, I'm sorry, what? They'll go, ketchup or mustard. What do you like on your hot dog? Right? Like, and it's a non sequitur. It's out of nowhere. It's not a pitch. It's not, right. It's just a conversation starter. But just to be clear for everybody else, as we go through this, you are at a networking event, you are in a conversation with someone, and that person asks you, what do you do? Right. So that's the scenario and the question being asked. And then what we're asking you guys to do is to tell us what you do. And if you're not sure how to frame it, right, then we can go around the room and give feedback for you too. Like, that's the other thing, is we're trying to help each other here, right? So if there's ways that we can improve, let's use each other to as a resource to improve.
All right, let's get to it, Tom. We got a friend Carrie, we got a friend Jason, Gary's here, Monty was up here, Brian and Gary. You guys want to come up and give us your what you do, and when somebody asks you that question, like Tom said, what do you do? How are you going to answer it? And feel free to put it in the chat too. Okay, Tom, we'll go to Carrie. And then what do you say we do a little show and tell, and then we'll go to Jason, Gary. Go on.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Carrie, somebody asked you, what do you do? What do you say?
Well, I think people hold on. I don't think. I know people hold on to stories. So what I really liked what you said, Dom, was you said, oh, some political person is doing this because their father and I know who you're talking about, and I'm not going to go political because we're not allowed to here in this room, but there's a story, there's a passion, there's a reason. So I also like the feedback for Sonia where like tell why you're so passionate about your work. People connect with the story. I hid for the longest time that I needed glasses and I'm a professional photographer. Well, I see with my heart. That's why I can create good images. I don't really need, it has nothing to do with progressive glasses or not. So when meeting people, I just have to say for Julie is a great connector, unbelievable connector. So much so, my dad met with the chief of staff, Joseph Dunford, and he called me and he said, "What's the name of that publishing house that Gary E. Hall used?" I'm like, "Mediacasters, Dad." Because he was going to meet with Dunford because he's going to write the foreword for my dad's book about veterans. So see how Julie is.
And who else did he write? This is the crazy part. Who else did General Dunford write a foreword
Oh,
for?
he wrote it. He wrote the foreword for Gary E. Hall. So my dad was going to meet with Dunford, who's from Boston. That's why there's the connection. He went to Boston College High School. Same part of the city that my dad grew up, Dorchester. Same with the Wahlberg family, just saying. I know Julie loves Donnie Wahlberg.
Name dropper. Is this name dropper room?
Yeah, flexing. There you go.
Anyways, but that was really cool to be like, it's called Mediacasters and talk about power. Chiefs of staff, so cool.
Carrie, your line about seeing with your heart, what to me that's just a fantastic line. I don't, and not that it's a line or anything, but for you to, I get it. And what as a, it doesn't matter about my lens, it doesn't matter about my glasses. I see with my heart. Beautiful, well said. And I will say, Carrie's a quite talented writer as well. When you read some of the stuff she's written, so well done. So Carrie, one more time. Somebody asks you what you do. You got 15 seconds to answer them. What do you say?
Well, I would not do not to criticize Tom because I've been on 100 dates in my 100 million dates. I wouldn't connect with someone who says ketchup or mustard. I just wouldn't. I don't like gimmicks. I just don't. And so is it something that's like non-emotional? Sure. Is it a tool? Absolutely. But I'd rather say a lot of the wrong things and just speak from my heart and have it land or not land. But when you're vulnerable and when you're really genuine, people lean in. So that's what I would say. So I would say, like, do I have lip gloss on my teeth? Like, I would just speak from the heart. That's what my advice would be.
All right. Thank you, Carrie Brett. Okay. Hey, we got some stars on LinkedIn. We got Heather Cox says long time no see. I've been looking at her social content. She's blowing up. So Heather Cox, well done on that. Okay. Jason, we're coming. Don't leave. We're doing show and tell. You ready for show and tell? We do this every not the smartest guys in the room. Go on.
I'm ready, buddy. Show it to me.
Okay.
Or tell me about it. I don't know. Maybe
yeah,
do both.
Okay. One, I will flash it slower in front of the screen because Tom taught me that and it made sense. Okay. As a new dad, Tom has a lot of great things coming his way. Things that, I one time I wrote in a book, it was about jobs. And I got to one that I considered was the hardest job, but the most rewarding. It was being a parent. So looking around my little office today, I found this. It is a rock made by my daughter at some point. I guess she didn't make the rock, but she found the rock. And here it is in my office. And in all of her, it says and she couldn't even spell at the time, as we see. And this says, and that's how weird it is. I don't know what grade she was, and she's actually pretty intelligent. So it says, "My dad rocks." It looks like RAKS. All the D's are backwards. The my dad, but made for my daughter. And so it says 2015. I think that's a 15. Would you, Maddie, 15? Is that what you would think, Tom?
Well, I'm not sure because your camera's mirrored, so everything's backwards anyway.
All right. So it just says miss. I don't know, but I think it's in year 2015.
It says sim to me.
Sim. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, beautiful rock from my daughter. Even though it's a simple rock painted yellow and purple, I'm appreciative of it. I'm thankful of it, and I wish Tom a future filled with rocks painted from his daughter. So that's today's show and tell.
We'll see. I'm sure I'll get plenty of finger paintings and drawings and stuff like that. I don't know. We'll see if they do rocks. You know, if she does rocks at some point, we'll see. I don't know if I'll ever get a rock. But
you can only hope. You can only hope.
Right. But I'm sure I'll get plenty of finger paintings and plenty of drawings and things that I'll have to, probably 15 years down the line, I'll look back at it and go, I'm not really sure what that was supposed to be. And it'll take me a minute to remember what the drawing was supposed to be or what it was supposed to say. Right. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to those things. And like even just in the first couple of weeks, super interesting thing. But like I said, she's 3 weeks old today. And she has started to really like focus on your face. Because the first couple of weeks, like she's just kind of looking all over the place. Like she's not really like sort of focusing what she's looking and like intentionally looking at specific things. She's just kind of looking all over, right? Just kind of taking it all in. But now when you talk to her, she actually like will look at your face when you talk to her, which is kind of cool. But I'm really excited for the part where like she starts to like a buddy of mine said the first 3 months are rough, right? And there's not a lot happening in the first 3 months. But after the first 3 months, it's like that's when they start like holding their head up, really reacting to you, smiling at you, things like that. So I'm pretty excited for that stuff to start happening in a couple of months. But yeah, no, I think that's really cool. I hope someday to have something from my daughter in my office or on my desk, similar to your rock that you have for Maddie there. For sure.
Yeah, good going. I hope you do too. Well, so she's waving. Jackie, what's the wave? Oh, she hung up for a second. Okay, Jason, we're coming your way. But first, I want to say, Jason, earlier I mentioned that I used the word hit. I meant pat when my daughter was little on the back. Julie started talking about, this is in the comments, Julie started talking about Garbage Pail Kids. Jason wanted to know which Garbage Pail Kid Julie would be. So we have a whole sideshow going on here in Garbage Pail Kid land. And I love Garbage Pail Kids too.
Tom said that his sister thought that he's going to be thrown out in the trash.
So. There's the connection to Garbage Pail Kids. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because my mom sarcastically said she was going to put me out with the trash because I was inconsolable, and my sister got really upset. And then Julie said in the comments, Garbage Pail Kid. I also had a ton of Garbage Pail Kids when I was young too. I genuinely don't remember any of the names, but I definitely had a bunch of those too, for sure. But I think we should let's get to Jason. Let's hear what Jason says when we're at a network.
Jason, so somebody comes up to you. Go on, Tom. I'm sorry.
Oh no, all good. So I was going to say, Jason. So just so we're clear, you're at a networking situation, like a networking event. You're in a conversation with someone, right? In that conversation, that person asks you, "What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
I'm an international man of mystery at this event, trying to discover other aliens. No, I'm just playing.
No, I was gonna say, oh my God, where do we? I was just gonna just act like I didn't hear it. Okay.
No, I would actually use something like that. I'd use to break their ice because you don't know how the intent. Some people are so straightforward they can't even see their own damn shadow. Some people need a little bit of levity to break in the conversation because either you look interesting you're available in their area, their vicinity. So you got to look at like, that you're an event. So I tell you like, okay, I work in legalities of agriculture. Oh, really? Oh, okay. What does that entail? Well, I practice law. I deal with eminent domain, but I'm interested also in what you do. So I'm here at this event, yada, yada, yada. You use, it's the connector. Now let's work on the relation. So if someone asks me what I do, I revert the question in a different way to relate of what we just heard. Hey, there was something interesting I heard. What are your thoughts? Because they're not asking you what you do just for no reason. There's always a motive to why someone's asking you what you do. But if I go and tell people, oh, hey, yeah, I'm a lawyer, that's not always the thing that I want to do. I'm at an event, I want to be able to relax. And when you come with certain professional aspects, that's where you got to be able to learn how to socially navigate with the environment, the body language, the style of the conversation, the tone. So if you're able to just be able to lower the guard, so to speak, and make it a friendly, easing, hey, let's walk together, let's talk together for a minute. And it may end quickly and it may keep going. You don't know. It's just like, what do you want out of it? And what are you going to leave with? If you leave with like, hey, you know what? I'd like to know more and talk. Okay. Or, that was interesting to know. I'll walk on. So to me, at a networking event, learn the environment first. Always keep 3 critical points of interest of why you're at that networking event that brought you there. And always remember to use those 3 things that relate and connect them to you and you to them while you're all here. That way, when the identity comes out, it's a lot easier. Because otherwise, if you're just telling me you're a straightforward, straight shooter, you go tell me you're a producer. Great, that's nice. Okay, and then what is the leave? It's just like, make sure that it's the connector, the relation is always your calling card, and you're not always relatable to everybody. So just be flexible. If you have expectations in that conversation right off the bat, you're going to walk away with a dead mind and a dead flower in your garden of experiences. So learn to really what is in the adaptable situation at hand, not what you expect. So that's my answer.
Jason, appreciate you, man. And one funny start to it. And I like what he's saying about reading the room. So like John had mentioned earlier, if somebody comes back and they ask, like I would try to deflect, like we're talking networking, we're always trying to build. I always want to build a relationship. Let's build a relationship. Let's think long term. Let's quit thinking about quick sell, quick pitch, quick all that. I get it. But to John's point, if somebody's direct with you and they say, "What do you do?" Be prepared to tell them what you do. To my point, be clear about what you do. To Tom's point and Julie's point, be excited about what you do. So if you're gonna tell them, be like Carrie, be passionate about what you do. I wrote it down. She sees with her heart, passionate about what you do. So, but don't just avoid and not know what you do, not tell them what you do. Come on, you're better than that. And what you do is important and going to make an impact. So don't discount it. Tom, it is that time of the day. 10:31. We've talked about babies. We've talked about my tan. We talked about rocks. We talked about pitches. We talked about networking. Now Tom has to figure out if any of that tied together. So go on, my friend.
Thanks, Dom. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think there's a couple of things that are really important when it comes to how we think about networking and how we engage with people in a networking situation, right? And that's what we're talking about today. Like as the title says up at the top there on Clubhouse, if you're not on Clubhouse, if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, the title of the room is obviously not the smartest guys in the room, but then next to that, it says networking time, right? Because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about networking and specifically, how do you answer the question in a networking situation when you're in a conversation with somebody and they ask you, what do you do? And I think there's a couple of things that bear repeating from my perspective. And those are, one, remember why you're there in the first place, right? You're at a networking event, right? You're in that situation to create opportunity to develop relationships. That's what networking is for. You are there to develop relationships. You are not there to sell, right? You are not there to raise funding. You are not there to close business, right? That's not what networking is for. Networking is about building relationships that lead to business and transactions down the road, but the relationship has to come first. And I think just like any other relationship you have in your life, those relationships need to be built on an exchange of value, right? And how you start to lay the foundations for those relationships built on an exchange of value is by sharing a little bit of yourself, by being authentic to who you are, by explaining your values clearly, by telling people clearly and succinctly what you do that also conveys to them that you are passionate and excited about the work that you do, and invites them to engage with you in a discussion about your work, about your mission, about your passion for what you do professionally. So I think those are the two things that I would really encourage people to have in the back of their mind the next time you find yourself in a networking situation, and someone asks you, what do you do? Remember why you're there, and remember that you actually are passionate and excited about what you do, and you should share that with the world. And that's all I got for today. Thanks so much to everybody for being here. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. You guys are the reason why we show up every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday. It's the summer. People take vacations. People have babies. What are you going to do? But yeah, we appreciate you guys. You're the reason why we show up here most Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Clubhouse, but streaming all over the internet, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. No longer on Twitter because they changed that. X has now changed it. So you have to have a premium account to live stream there. And there's no way I'm paying for a premium X account. That's not happening. So anyway, thank you all for being here. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. And we will see you guys next time in Not the Smartest Guys in the Room, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. Until then, have a great rest of your week. We appreciate you. We love you. We wish you all the best. And we can't wait to hear about what you do next time. All right, we'll see you then. Bye-bye, guys.